Hi, this is Andreas Slotte from in Bangkok with the Orca Student Reporter. With me is Secretary Sering with the Climate Change Commission. We're here talking about sustainable consumption and production in Asia. And so if you could briefly just start telling us a bit about what exactly you do and how this relates to SCP.
Well, I'm the head of the Climate Change Office of the Climate Change Commission of the Philippines. We're primarily a new agency created in 2009 by law. We are mandated to coordinate and monitor, evaluate all programs and policies of government that are related to climate change.
Okay, thank you. First question, you've become sort of a forefront figure in really implementing SCP policies, and you're talking to people and they've been commenting on that. You're trying to push finding these sort of niche markets of what you really make a difference, where you can make a difference. Can you talk us a bit about that? The success behind that, and how well is the implementation of that working out?
Well, the SCP, or Sustainable Consumption and Production, is a policy that are now actually being talked about after Rio Plus 20. It has been there long before, but it has reached a level of bigger awareness because of the Rio Plus 20 and the outcome after that. In the Philippines, we are looking at SCP from the point of view of cleaner production, engaging the trade and industry primarily in moving this. But what we've seen that it's no longer just trade and industry, it has a cross-sectoral impact and implication overall. So what we wanted to say simply is that how this SCP policy should be customized in the way in the Philippine setting. What we simply mean is there are general rules that could probably be applicable in all countries, but if you really move down on details, it will have to change depending on the needs of the country. So if you want to be effective in implementing any policy for that matter, it has to be simplified and customized to the needs of your constituency. SCP, as I've said in my discussion earlier, is perceived to be a restrictive policies vis-a-vis or against traditional production, meaning how will this impact on cost, knowing that it will involve some technology that are not necessarily available in the country. Meaning if we put in SCP as a major tool of policy moving towards a green economy, we have to be conscious as a country, can we afford it? So overall, how we're implementing SCP in the Philippines right now is still based on the analysis that the transition will have to be determined on the proper time before government can intervene fully in integrating SCP in all programs and policies of government. So what we're simply doing is, how is it being implemented? Well, it is being discussed. It has found its way to mainstream policy, and how it has been effective in doing so remains to be seen, because there's still lack of monitoring and evaluation and measuring SCP as a whole.
Just talking about the measuring sort of success, do you have any sort of suggestions on feasible ways of measuring success from implementing SCP policies, or is that still in the sort of workings?
As I've said, when you talk about niche and you talk about as a whole, we have to know, can SCP really be applicable across the board? It seems that it's not feasible at the moment. So you try to look at where it can be effective, then you look at the niche. When you talk about niche, then you can't have rules that will only apply to the niche. So when going back to the niche question is, right now, as I've said in my speech earlier, is that if you can have a good message, which SCP is trying to convey, and that good message, you should also determine how it should be relayed is also an issue. Meaning, I've compared it to the McDonald's model, that if you have a McDonald's in the Philippines, for example, we offer the normal products at the same time we offer chicken spaghetti. The same way McDonald's in Japan offers sushi, as well as other countries, maybe in Bangkok, I don't know what they offer other than the traditional. But what these multinational companies have mastered is the strategy of understanding what the community needs. In short, if we apply SCP and be successful, we not only start at the top level, but understand the constituency that you're intended to implement it.
Okay. Let us just sort of, when I talk about that, consumer behavior. I think like that's a very important part in all this. And when talking about, finding the niche or talking about the constituency, it's really about making individuals also understand what they have to do. I personally find that perhaps to be the biggest issue with all this, because it's really changing our habits, changing our ways, and something we've grown accustomed to. Could you share some insights on human behavior and how you see that we could actually solve that aspect of this problem?
Well, if I speak in behalf of our country, we've seen the Consumer Confidence Survey on the third quarter stating that Filipinos, one of the major concerns of the Filipinos, other than the normal concerns, is that global warming, climate change is now above issues in increasing in fuel prices and food, which is something that we haven't seen before, meaning it makes sense in a way because people are saying, what am I going to do with food if I'm not going to survive it anyway? So if you look at that, it now becomes an opportunity for the policymakers to actually listen to these concerns based on surveys. Sometimes you introduce policies and without even understanding these policies, whether it's acceptable or not. Of course, it's a recipe for failure if you don't meet both ways, you don't meet halfway. You might be government, you can be the policymaker. If your constituency doesn't want it, then it will be a recipe for failure. So a specific example is that if it is a restrictive policy and if SCP is perceived to increase costs, you now have to convey the message that no, it probably won't. It probably will enhance your competitiveness. Because the intention of SCP is to produce more with less. And in that sense, he will be able to save some of your forest, do it a sustainable way. You take out your unsustainable practices in the process. So, and we see that the mindset of the consumer is moving towards that. You can now use the social concern and the moral concern as an added motivation for them to actually follow your policy.
One final question, talking about growth, sort of tying all this. There's a lot of talk about green growth and tying that in with SCP policies, and then we have our 10-year framework, and this and that they want to achieve. Do you think all of this is feasible? I mean, on one hand, the Asian countries are still perhaps not seeing double-digit growth in the same rate, but we're still talking about very high levels of growth. They want to achieve same levels, same standards of living as in Europe. That's a big increase. Many billions of people live in Asia. So on one hand, we want to have, we want to reduce the impact of the planet. We want to lessen the amount of Earths we're using. But you still want to have green growth. And then we have this 10-year framework plans where we think, like, in 10 years, we have to do this or else. Is this all going to work out? Do you think it's actually feasible?
Well, no. If you can do all at the same time, probably not. But you do incremental changes that matters. So you pick the one. You'd rather have 100 options than just 5 options. So even if it's overwhelming for you, let's have the 100 and maybe we can do the 5 or 10. That's still 10% out of the 100. What we're saying simply is we know what to do. We feel that, sometimes it's just because we're rushing and because of climate change, we know what science is telling us. We seem to be rushing and doing this all at the same time, and it becomes very much an overwhelming job. So I've said we have to simplify it, because for policymakers like me, we're not science experts. We're policymakers, and if this science-based results are not translated to the language we understand, then maybe we cannot do all this 10-year program, all this planning, because we're the ones who are supposed to make this decision, and yet we're also prudent in making sure that these are not perverse. We need to understand the trade-offs in doing one thing. We need to understand when should be the proper time to do it, when should government should intervene, should we let just the market do it by themselves, let the private sector do it. But it's good that we have a plan rather than no plan at all. We've seen how countries like Sweden and other countries have benefited from all this green technology. We've seen how Germany economy actually grew by doing a lot of renewable energy, and we've seen that. In fact, they came out with a report, I think 2 years ago, that says if Europe wants to improve and grow as a zone, they have to invest more of their money in green growth. So with the crisis right now, of course, in Europe, and as well sweeping along, they're now looking at Asia. Asia to be the emerging economy. Maybe it's a good way to start, and if we feel that green growth would be the best framework moving towards, let's see. But econometrics should be in place, trade-off should be clear, and developing countries should not feel that this is restrictive of their growth, and that we should have more actually trust in all these things that's happening around us. What we're saying is we are so interconnected. We cannot do this by themselves. Any actions that happen to Thailand, for example, in all these disputes on land, would have brought any country to war 100 years ago. But right now, because we're so interconnected, we slow down, we talk, and then we go through a process of discussion where we can agree on these things. And hopefully, when I talk too much and all these things, I get excited. But overall, the message is just simple. We move towards sustainability. There's just no way to go but there. How to get there is another issue. And getting there has, just like any country, has different ways. If I have to simplify it, you can either take a car, take the bus, take the train, take the plane. But you cannot say that going there is taking a plane is the only way, because if you're too fast, it might be too fast, and if you're too slow, it might be too slow. So it's about the determination of timing, a proper mix of how these policies would actually benefit not just you, but on the global scale, and then hopefully we'll make a better place and see this planet still breathing down the road.
Thank you for a very great interview. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Okay.